Good afternoon and thanks for joining us here. The next session is on payment technologies and what's happening in the world. It's a pretty big field on what's happening in the world on payment technologies. So what we'll do is we'll basically focus on two areas today. One is EMV and chip and PIN migration, and the other one is mobile payments and what basically is included in that. My name is Michael Balzer, and I'm President for Global Blue One Interface Solutions, Inc., and also Senior Vice President for the Global Blue Group. And I'll give you a little bit of an introduction of who Global Blue actually is. We're a company based in Europe, head office in Switzerland with around 1,500 people. We have 8 different product lines, and the key product lines that we have is a VAT refund for international travelers. And then we have a dynamic currency conversion product, as well as media and marketing services product as well. We're private equity owned. We have 270,000 merchants globally, and we're today operating in 40 countries. One Interface is one of the product lines in Global Blue. And what One Interface basically is, we have created a separate division within Global Blue that's specialized on software integration. Software integration for retailers, software integration for hotels and restaurants as well. Our focus is basically EFT integration from a global perspective, as well as supporting some of the Global Blue value-added services, such as tax-free shopping. From a One Interface perspective, we have offices here in New York, Singapore, as well as London. And today, we are providing our integrated EFT solution globally. So we have customers in Asia, we have customers in Europe, Middle East, as well as North America. And we are a Retail Pro development and strategic alliance partner since 2012. So that's basically about One Interface and Global Blue. EMV, we want to talk a little bit about introduction, what is actually EMV and what people are doing in order to migrate to an EMV solution. Basically, EMV, today in a lot of countries, chip technology for credit and debit payments has been introduced already, and it's in the process of either being implemented or it has been implemented in a lot of areas already. You see the numbers here on the screen. There are a lot of EMV chip cards issued out there. 40.1% of the total payment cards as of Q1 last year were in circulation as chip cards, and 18.7 million POS devices or payment terminals accept EMV cards, which is quite a significant installed base. And why are we talking about EMV here at the Retail Pro conference is because Visa announced that they want to speed up the chip migration and the introduction of EMV in the US. So it has an impact on the US business as well. Here you see a little bit of an overview. You see that there are no numbers for the US because there are no numbers for the US today that are officially published. But you can see that basically from an adoption rate, both on the card issuing as well as on the EMV terminal side, it's quite significant in some of the regions. If you look at Europe, basically being at almost 90%, even Canada, Latin America, and Caribbean being at 76.5% adoption rate for payment terminals that support EMV chip cards. So it's quite a good footprint already. What does it actually mean if you want to migrate to an EMV chip technology? We're focusing on two areas. One, if you're operating in a standalone environment, so you have no integrated system, the migration is pretty simple because you replace the non-EMV terminal with an EMV terminal and you're ready to go. So that angle is pretty simple. But what actually happens when you do integrated payments? And if you look at the US, I mean, especially here also at the Retail Pro conference, a lot of the business partners and retailers are providing integrated payment solutions. So what is the impact of EMV? The first impact is that today you have a swipe at the Retail Pro point of sale system or ECR system, and the integration was all about reducing equipment in store, so you didn't want to have a payment terminal. However, now with the EMV introduction, you have to go back. There is a payment terminal, or a PIN pad becomes part of the actual solution. And the introduction of EMV really goes against what integration was about in the past, because it was about getting rid of a terminal. Now you have to go back and you add a PIN pad or a terminal. It's a lot about solution certification with processors as well. I mean, today a lot of people are using gateways in order to process a transaction to a processor, or are directly going to the processor. If you add a PIN pad or a terminal to the solution, you got to recertify the solution. You got to make sure that the hardware that you use in combination with a gateway or with a processor, that it got to be certified. This certification process makes really the change of a gateway provider or a merchant service or a processor more complex with EMV compared to what you're doing today. Here's an example from a European migration process, and you'll see in a minute the complexity of what has happened there. It's a US hotel chain that has operations in 16 European countries. They're using the same gateway provider in all these countries. They have the same point of sale ECR system and the same hotel system as well. And they're actually using the same processor and merchant service in all 16 countries. So if you look at it from a glance, it's actually not difficult. It's the same processor, it's the same management system, it's the same gateway provider. So EMV migration shouldn't be that complex. Well, the case study is slightly different, because they started in 2009 to migrate from a pure magnetic stripe environment to an integrated EMV solution. And what they had to do, they had to basically do 12 certifications with the processor. The reason why they had to why they had to certify the solution with the processor 12 times is that they are using a different POS terminal or a different payment terminal. Why are you using a different payment terminal? Because of country requirements. The hardware needs to be certified in a specific country in order to work. If it's not certified in that country, you cannot use it. For example, if you look at Holland, the Netherlands or Belgium, if you don't have your hardware certified in Belgium and Netherlands, you cannot put the terminal into the market. So it was 12 processor certification with the same processor due to different terminals that they're using. Up until now, from 2009 to 2012, they've basically certified for 6 countries, and they've migrated to EMV. 3 more countries have a roadmap of when they migrate, but for the other 7 countries, there is no concrete plan. And the reason is that for this US hotel chain, if you only have like one property in a country, you don't want to go through the process of certifying, because it's very time consuming, it's expensive. So from a return of investment, it doesn't work. Which means that 7 out of these 16 countries have no plan to EMV migration, and so far the hotel chain spent around $300,000 for the 6 countries where they've migrated to. What are the alternatives to EMV migration? How can you actually simplify it? And what a lot of people are looking at is basically going from a fully integrated solution to what people call semi-integrated solution. What you basically have, you have your point of sale system like Retail Pro, and you're basically working with certified payment terminals that then either go to a gateway or that go directly to a processor, which means that the actual terminal that you're using is certified. You integrate it into Retail Pro, and you have basically the whole process from the terminal to the bank where the processing is happening, that is certified. The upside here is also that the introduction of near-field communication, NFC, or mobile payments is a lot simpler, because if the terminal is supporting this functionality, it can be integrated into Retail Pro as well. The whole changeover, if you want to change processors or merchant service, is a lot simpler, because you just have to swap out the terminal that is certified already and then work with a different processor. And it's a simplified certification, because as long as the hardware that you use is certified with a processor, you basically exchange the hardware, and the only thing you do is an end-to-end validation rather than a full-blown certification process. So compared to what you've seen with the US hotel chain, the migration cost is significantly reduced because you don't need to go through all these different certifications. Oops, here you go. So in summary, before we go to the next topic of mobile payments, EMV chip technology will be introduced in the US. There is a date for it, and obviously people are working towards it. The upside is that the processors and the solution providers and also the provider of payment terminals are prepared for EMV chip technology. I think what a lot of the merchants and the business partners need to look at is what is the best possible solution that really meets your merchants' requirements. So you got to look at what do your merchants want to do, what is their process, what is their operational requirement for the stores, and what is the best possible solution for that. And again, I think there are a lot of learnings that US-based merchants and also solution providers or business partners can take from other regions. If you work with business partners that have been in Europe or in Asia Pacific where EMV is introduced, there are a lot of learnings that you can get from the business partners of what's the best process, so you don't have to start from scratch. EMV in general is nothing really to be afraid of. I think the key here is evaluate the available solutions and then take the decision of what is right for your merchants and for you as a business partner, because there are many ways to basically go about this, and there are also some easier ways, or there are some more long-winded and more expensive ways of doing it. So much on EMV migration. The next topic we want to talk about is emerging payments, and I would like Anthony Donohue, our Manager of Market Development from our US operation, to go through that.
Cool. This one. I wasn't fancy enough to have the mobile microphone. Basically, what I wanted to go through today is just to update everybody a little bit on what is NFC, what is mobile, what is digital when it comes to payments. If you read anything about payment news, payment technology, every single day of the week, there's an article about or something relating to mobile, digital, something like that. So what I wanted to do is just briefly go through what are the different options around the world when it looks at this, and where is really the industry sitting at today when it comes to these particular things. If we just cover off what NFC is, and to give a bit of background, I started working in a bank in Australia in the late 90s. It was my first proper job, and I met a team of people that had been working on NFC in the bank with MasterCard since at least the mid-90s. So the technology for NFC itself and technology for NFC for payments has been around for a very, very long time, almost 20 years. NFC is hardware-based technology. So it means near-field communication. You need to have an object that has a chip, and you need to have an object that has a reader. If we look at NFC and where NFC has really been the most successful, my personal opinion, it's only really been successful in two particular places. One is with Octopus in Hong Kong, and the other is with Oyster in the UK. Both of those are public transport access systems. Outside of that, there is some forms of NFC in Shanghai for their public transport system, but it's closed loop only for Shanghai. Korea has a variant. Japan has some variations of NFC as well. But as an en masse introduction where people, the general public, somebody like my mother or my father would actually use it, is really only public transport in Hong Kong and in London. And as I said, for NFC to work, it needs to work on the issuing side, and it also needs to work on the acquiring side. We look at then the other topic that everybody's talking about, and that's a mobile or a digital wallet. And it's important to note that there is a significant difference between NFC and a mobile or digital wallet. A mobile or a digital wallet is basically software-based. So it's not necessarily tied into hardware. It's not tied into a particular phone or a particular card. It's software-based. Today, the largest digital wallets that exist are Apple and PayPal. Apple, I would assume everybody here, or you would have a member of your family that has an Apple ID, and if you ever go to iTunes and you use your Apple ID, or you use the App Store with Apple and use your Apple ID, that is a digital wallet. And as I said, there's not necessarily a hardware requirement that is tethered to a mobile or a digital wallet. So just so that everybody's at the same knowledge base so far. If we look at what people are doing today in terms of both NFC and mobile and digital wallets, as I said before, the two biggest and the two industry leading so far are PayPal and Apple. So if you look at PayPal, PayPal has basically two ways in which you can access their wallet. One is through a physical card, if you request PayPal to issue you with a physical card, or you can also redeem, or you can also use the PayPal wallet using your phone number and a PIN. And I should have premised this is bricks and mortar retail transactions. This is not online or commerce. This is me physically wanting to use my card. The most famous integration that PayPal has to date in a bricks and mortar environment is with Home Depot. So when you're making your purchase with Home Depot, if you choose to pay with PayPal, depending whether you go to the self-service kiosk or whether you're using an interactive cashier experience, you would select PayPal as your payment option. You would enter in your phone number that's registered with PayPal, and then you would enter in your PIN number with PayPal as well, and then you can access the PayPal wallet. And as I said before, the other most famous wallet and the largest wallet is Apple, using your Apple ID. So Apple has approximately 400 million Apple ID user accounts throughout the world, so they are the largest. One of the significant things that happened in this whole sector recently is that Apple did not introduce NFC to the iPhone 5. There was a lot of speculation, a lot of gossip, a lot of rumours to say, would they have it, would they not have it? Everybody knows whatever Apple does, a great portion of the industry will trend behind what Apple does, especially in the retail sector. They don't do it. What they did do is they introduced Passport. So if anybody wants to see Passport, I don't know how to show it on the screen, but you can come and see me later. But I've actually got Passport set up on my phone, so you can see what it looks like if you want to play with it. I don't actually have that many wallets in my Passport, but I've got a couple. Starbucks did announce that they would be integrating their application in with Passport. They said that it would be released by this month. So that's basically where Apple is going with that. And again, it's important to note, both of these are not hardware-based solutions. They're both in the cloud software wallets. If we then look at Google and what Google is doing with the Google Wallet, Google Wallet is basically intended to be an NFC wallet when it comes to card payment bricks and mortar. Google Wallet usage is extremely limited because it was intended to be coupled with Android, and it was intended to be coupled with phones that have NFC chips. The problem is there's not that many phones that are actually manufactured that have NFC in them, and I'll get to some of the reasons why in a second. The other one that everybody hears a lot about, especially if you're in this sector, is Square. Square, I have no idea how or why. I kind of think that they're almost like the Facebook of payments. Their last valuation was around $3 billion US for their valuation. They really don't have a lot that they can do. They've got stuff that they can do in certain sectors, but they're kind of limited with what they do. When it comes to the wallet perspective, Square have a digital wallet that you can use and you can download and tether to your phone, whichever application it seems to be. But Square, again, is a closed-loop system. So for you to accept a Square payment, you need to be a Square on the retailer side, and you need to be a Square on the consumer side as well. What's interesting in the last big news about Square is that Starbucks recently invested, I think it was around $25 million into Square as a company. They're now taking a very strategic directive in Square, and Starbucks in the US at least will implement Square into all of their corporate stores throughout the US. So that's also one of the other big trending factors behind all of these wallets. If we look at a couple of the telephone providers that are playing in this space as well, we have ISIS and we have Everything Anywhere. ISIS is US based. It's a joint venture, so to speak, between AT&T, T-Mobile and Verizon in the US. It's NFC based, and they've just announced that they will have pilots for ISIS in Salt Lake City and in Austin. ISIS and Everything Anywhere, which is the European equivalent, which is owned by Orange and T-Mobile, is again NFC based. What the difference is when these guys are doing NFC is that they're basically doing secure SIMs. So the reason why the telcos are behind it is because the telcos are the ones that are providing the SIM cards to the consumer. So that's how they're buying into the experience. We then have merchant customer exchange, which you would think for this group of people would be the most interesting. This is a retailer-based organisation, and merchant customer exchange, their intention and their goal is to figure out that as an industry, what do they want to do and where do they want to go when it comes to things like mobility and wallets in terms of what they're going to accept at an issuance place. Some of the larger retailers that are all members of MCX include 7-Eleven, Bed Bath & Beyond, Best Buy, CVS, Dunkin' Donuts, Gap, Sears, Target, Shell and Walmart. They haven't disclosed exactly what they're going to do yet. My feeling is maybe they know and they just don't want to tell anybody, or maybe they still haven't made up their mind exactly what they're going to do. But one of the most interesting facts that came out the other week is that basically the guy that runs payments for Walmart, he said that they do not see any value in Google Wallet and they won't be supporting Google Wallet from Walmart, and that they are going to follow the strategy that is set by MCX. So it's quite interesting to see how different people are trying to trend the industry in different ways based off where they think they want to go. What's the future of NFC, digital wallets? I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. The biggest problem in this sector is that you have too many people that they're all conflicting with each other and they're all fighting to say who owns the consumer. Is it the retailer? Is it the bank? Is it the card scheme, as in Visa card, MasterCard or American Express? Is it AT&T or T-Mobile? Everybody has a stake in with the consumer, but everybody is fighting and jostling to say who owns the transaction for that particular consumer. Until everybody gets on the same page and everybody decides that they want to go in one direction, you're always going to have conflicting ways of where people are trying to take this particular segment. Do we do NFC? Do we do digital wallets? What do we do at the point of sale? How are we going to accept these payments? How do we integrate this in with all of our social media tracking and all of that stuff? How do you do things with geolocations, with coupons and loyalty, etc., etc.? There's too much competition over me as a consumer. So that's point number one. Point number two, as a consumer, I don't believe in NFC and I don't believe in digital wallets. When I go to Starbucks, I pull my card out of my wallet and I swipe it. I don't open up the Starbucks app. I don't do anything like that. Starbucks in the US say that they have about 25% of their transactions are accepted using the Starbucks application on the phone. So that's basically a 3D barcode where you've got a 3D barcode scanner at the cash register and they scan that. I live in New York City. I go to Starbucks at least once a day, if not 2 or 3 times a day, depending on how stressful my day is. I have never seen anybody use the application in New York City. I've seen, who was the other influencer? There's a chain of stores in New York City called Dwayne Reed. So they've implemented NFC readers at all of their point of sales. They've got a nice Equinox or Hypercom device. It's got a nice big reader at the top of it. Again, I've got one of these stores very close to my office and very close to home. I've seen in my 3 years of living in New York, I've seen people try and use it twice, and both times it failed. We have NFC readers in taxi cabs in New York so that you can do tap and go payments, either with your Amex or your PayWave or the MasterCard PayPass. I've had friends that have come over that have said, oh, this is cool, we'll try and use it in the back of the taxi, and it doesn't work. So I don't know where it's going to go. That's the moral of the story. Do we need to worry about it at this point in time? I wouldn't. I would wait and see what the industry does. I would, if I was a betting man, which I am, I would bet on 2 people. One is I want to see where Apple's going to try and take the industry on that side. The other thing is I would wait and see where MCX, specifically Walmart, see where they want to take the industry. If they ever meet, then you'll have a solution. If they don't meet, you're still going to have conflicting ideologies. And yes, I'm a skeptic sometimes too. And that's it. Do we have any questions for either myself or Michael? No? Amaru, go for it. Yeah.
If I heard you correctly, you mentioned that Starbucks did an integration with Square.
Yes.
I think we all read about. And but you also mentioned something with Apple.
Starbucks will be accepting Square, but Starbucks will also be porting the Starbucks application, so the barcode portion of the application, into Passport. So Starbucks is actually hedging their bets both ways, which maybe is smart. But the problem that you've got as a retailer to accept those barcodes like Starbucks do, you have to implement and invest in the 3D barcode scanners in all of the point of sales, which is what Starbucks have done. But I mean, everybody here that looks at hardware knows what the cost would be if you had to implement, 2 point of sale registers in every single location that you've got to go from 2D to 3D scanners. It'd be nice if somebody bought it.
Famously, the CTO Square came out recently with this big boast that he believes within 18 months or so that desktops will be cannibalized by mobile POS. Square. So I'm sure a lot of that was a self-serving statement. But do you have any feeling about that? Particularly, I'm curious about Square because Square is something that I also live in New York, as you know.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm seeing a lot of retailers adapt outside of the POS. In other words, standalone. So, for example, I belong to some private clubs. I'll go there and the guys pop out an iPad with a Square reader to take on payments.
There's two things. The Square, in my opinion, so I'll premise it with that. This is not the opinion of the company, so nobody can sue the company. You can try and sue me, but you won't get that much. Square's problem at the moment is that they're still closed loop. So they have their own POS, they have their own acceptance, but they're not opening it up. So I think that's going to be a very limiting factor for Square. You can get a degree of the SME segment, which is really where they're capturing the segment. But if you look at their pricing, if you look at what they will offer a retailer, they don't have much of a chance of getting into enterprise, unless the enterprise wants to buy into them, which is what Starbucks did.
But is Starbucks doing a kind of custom integration to Square that had done that, from my understanding? Is that
Yeah.
they're not using the same Square product that, for example, Coca-Cola does.
No.
They're doing their own.
They will do their own integration, but the Square have not released any APIs to anybody else. So nobody else can develop into Square. They're keeping everything in-house. I think that they're running their staff, because they're actually San Francisco based, I think it's either 118 or 180 staff that they've got. I mean, they've got a really nice valuation. They're getting a lot of really good investment. But if you look at Starbucks, at least in New York City, the majority of them are still using IBM hardware for the POS. And they do that because that is enterprise grade at a Starbucks, where you've got people bashing the crap out of the POS. I don't know how an iPad would go in that environment. An iPhone or an iPod Touch would not fit in that environment. So Square have a market sector, but are they going to be able to take over the enterprise sector? I think everybody here knows there's not much chance if they're going to stay closed loop with the solution that they have today. That's my opinion. Sue me if you don't like it. Any other questions, comments? Out of curiosity, has anybody ever successfully used NFC or a mobile wallet? One? Outside of public transport? So we've got 2, so we're probably sitting at about 10%, which is interesting to say the least. Cool. Well, I think we finish early, which is nice, or on time. So if anybody has any more questions or comments, feel free. We've got a booth outside as well, so come and say hello. Thank you very much.